Good morning and welcome to our webinar, Integrating Cloud Systems Rule of Three. My name is Andrew. I'm an account manager here at Aston and I'm delighted to be hosting today's session. So to give you guys a little bit of background, towards the end of 2024, during Aston's annual user group, Mike Saunt, Managing Director, delivered a fantastic presentation about using your spatial data warehouse as a central hub for information by integrating iShare with third-party systems. Some of our customers were unable to attend the event, so we've decided to revisit the presentation as a webinar today. So Mike will be speaking to you about 3 examples of this and their benefits. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mike. Mike, over to you.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming along today, much appreciated. I'm just sharing my screen, which I presume you can all see at the moment. So this is as Andrew's mentioned, a presentation that I gave at the user group back in November, and I've termed it the Rule of Three. Basically, it covers the fact that 20 years ago when I set up Aston Technology, there wasn't a cloud. It was 2005. And I think the first real cloud stuff that people ever became aware of was AWS, Amazon Web Services, which was in 2006. 15 years ago, we started integrating in a lot of back office systems. And we've done 75 or more over the years, but things have changed that a lot of systems aren't in databases anymore. They're in other cloud systems, hence this presentation. So integrating cloud systems. What have you got? You've got a spatial data warehouse. You've got a variety of tools for doing extract, transform, and load. And that may be via the studio, or you may have external tools such as FME. You want data sources, hence this presentation. Why? Well, you want to share your spatial data warehouse as your hub, and you want it to stay up to date. And you want to be able to create data views that are created within the spatial data warehouse. Some of those may be that you want to pull data out and make a public view as opposed to an internal view, which may show more information. How do we do this? Well, some examples that I'm talking about today, one we termed as bridging the cloud, and it's working with a solution called BridgeStation. Another one is securing some secure cloud data, which comes from Confirm, and that's by a company called Brightly. And the last one is live transactional data, getting that in and out of your spatial data warehouse, and that's via our managed integration service. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. What I've got the previous slides that I gave the user group, and then I've got some new content that we've added because a few months have moved on and we can show some different things now. So BridgeStation, this was paid for by St Helens Council, and it's made available for everyone else to be able to use as an integration. So if you know that your local authority does use BridgeStation, then you can integrate that. There's no cost incurred for yourselves if you can configure it as it's detailed in the help files that we provide. So basically, this is the BridgeStation user interface with a map. It's pretty simple. It's got Google Maps sitting underneath. I think it's more to do with the actual information that you can store, the attribute information that you can change. So basically, we take this data, there's and we pull that in via an API. These are taken dynamically via iShare through the scheduled tasks and via a workflow. So what you do, you build a workflow job. It's by this secure API that they make available, which is a geojson API. And that goes off to BridgeStation and it pulls down the file of all of your assets. So the new content related to BridgeStation this is how things are set up inside iShare Studio, and this could be via your ETL server, or it could be via your server in the Aston cloud. Basically, you need to go through and there's a Python script that we've built that allows to log into the BridgeStation API, which is authenticated in a similar way that we provide authentication that logs into data via from GeoPlace. This is authenticated data that's pulled down from BridgeStation. We download it locally and then we simply import it into the spatial data warehouse. We then have the data that's sitting in, that's very simple and easy for people to be able to use in your GIS. You could be putting some of this stuff out to the public if you so wish. But what I'll do here, this should be firing up. You see a yellow screen, which is the iShare GIS application just starting up. And basically this has come through and it's showing all the data that relates to BridgeStation. This is actually all the data. So we've got a variety of different types, where they're bridges, culverts, footbridges that are being shown that's coming out from BridgeStation. And I think this is set up on an overnight schedule, but it can be set up on however often you wish. The sort of thing that you can do within here, you can say, actually, I want to do a very simple selection and be able to see this information. So here we can see that data's being shown, and as normal with iShare GIS, if you come through, you can just then be highlighting what feature it is that you found. So it's showing 4 at the moment. Because it's inside the spatial data warehouse, we can now come through and start using more of the GIS type functionality that you get with iShare. So we could say for the structure type, we want it to be like a bridge. So that's doing a very simple query. And you might see now that none of the culverts or footbridges are being shown. So if I rerun a query against this, you can see the data's changed down below. In the same vein, what you can do is you could say, well, actually, I want to see everything that's not like a bridge. So it's a reverse of the previous query. And when we bring this up, you can see there's different data that's being shown. We could run the same query again, and it pulls that data down. So this is just highlighting that you've got data that's coming from an external system, and it's very simple to undertake it. So I've shown you some queries of how you can do that within the BridgeStation data and these different types of queries that can be undertaken. One of the good things is that we've got a blog post that's about this, and this presentation and video will be available as far as I'm aware. If you want copies of it, but we've got a blog post that talks about integrating BridgeStation software into a GIS. There's a blog post on that. There's also a full help file that's been written up that covers everything that you need to know about undertaking this. And as I said at the start of this was the time is paid for by St Helens Council. We're following the mantra of open source is you get what you've paid for. So St Helens got what they paid for. They're getting what everyone else has paid for, and everyone gets what everyone's paid for. So it's a real means that we're sharing everything that's going out with all our customers. The next one is confirm. Now this was undertaken by Haringey Council, the London Borough of Haringey. So this is there's the confirmed solution. It's very widespread, has widespread uses with lots of councils. The mapping is quite rudimentary, but it does what it needs to do for the asset management side of things. When the London Borough of Haringey approached us, they asked that whether they could get some information about their street lights and waste bins to come into iShare GIS. In the meantime, they've already extended this because we've given them a generic mechanism for doing all of this work. So they've actually also got it that they want to get current jobs that are available for their teams who are out by the asset management, and also they're pulling through the streetlight faults as well. And they've got about 33,000 street lights in the London Borough of Haringey, and then they've got another data set that comes out with which ones have got faults. So this one, very similar to how you saw things with the BridgeStation. There's a workflow job. There's a secure mechanism of going through to authenticate and download the data. This is connected to a different system called Brightly, and it pulls down a CSV file in this case. The CSV is generated on a schedule by Confirm in the cloud, and they export it to an SFTP site. So what happens there is that you come along, after you know that's been exported, you can come and pick that data up and then pull it back down into iShare GIS or iShare Maps or the Spatial Data Warehouse. So the new content that's more than what we had within the presentation of the user group. This highlights the various tasks that are set up within the studio to go and do this data. This is within the ETL. Basically, there are 4 steps involved here, which misses out on my general rule of 3, but there's 4 steps that are undertaken. One of them is to download the waste assets. So we've got 2 jobs here. One is for the waste assets. One is for street lighting faults. So we download the data in one job. We import that data into a temporary location within the spatial data warehouse. We then do a check on that to make sure the feature count is correct of what we expect it to be, so things are imported correctly. And if everything's okay, we then move on and we actually import it into the live location. This way, we don't get an interruption in data that's being served if there were any issues with the data that's come down. It's exactly the same process, but just a different set of data that comes down for the street lighting faults. So this is some of the data that's being shown. Excuse the icons and what have you, but I'll come through, I can click through and I can show you how this fits together. What we've got here, I'll come through, we can look at confirm. I'll turn off the street lights here because we're just looking at the waste. So there's lots of items here. We can come in and have a look around an area. And again, similar to what we were doing previously, we can come through and select everything that's within an area. And we've got the full amount of data that's sitting here. So there's lots of different types of data. And within here, it's totally up to yourselves when you configure iShare GIS and the spatial data warehouse. If you just want single types, a single layer, but you may say, actually, I'd like to have different layers. It depends what the assets team may wish to have, or people in those sort of areas, whether it's them or within the CRM. So that's the example that's sitting there with the waste the waste asset bins. Now, what we can do from those is a similar vein to what we were doing with the streetlight faults. We can come through and we can highlight those and show them. So I'll come back through again into iShare GIS, and I'll come through and turn that layer off, but I'll turn on the open streetlight jobs. So these items that are outstanding and need looking at. So here you can see there's a few different colours that are available. So we've got a flashing lamp that's sitting here and sitting here. And similar to what I showed with BridgeStation, once you've got it into a GIS that you can use and have a look through and make these types of queries, we could come through here and say we want to look at the defect type. We want to say where it's like it's flashing. And if I always like to put a little technical error in there. So here I'll just come back through and make a slight change to that. And here you can see we've got ones where we've got the burners, only the burners that are being shown at the moment. So I could come through here, make an adjustment here and do a larger search. So this is pulled through a lot less data. There's only 5 results and it's got lots of information here that is about the actual job notes. So there's a lot more information sitting here. Now, if I wanted, in a similar vein as I did with the BridgeStation, we could come through and do a reverse and say where it's not like a burner. And here we've got a lot of other information that's being shown. And instead of having about 15, we've got 5 items. We've got 94 items that are being pulled through here. So hopefully that shows you some of the results there of what can be undertaken by pulling the confirmed data in. What's actually happened at London Borough of Haringey, they took this in October or November, and they've actually included a couple of other types of jobs now. So they've got all the streetlight faults, and they're looking at some items that I mentioned earlier, which are to do with taking the actual jobs that people need to be doing out in the field. So they're really taking it forward, which is great. As I mentioned before, with BridgeStation, we've got a whole blog post that's all about mastering your local assets in an asset management system. So that's all to do with this item. We also got the full help pages that are made available. You can go and see it again. This doesn't need anything from Aston. It may need, if you read through the help files, we can provide some input. If you contact the support desk or your account manager, if you want to look at a few different things, there may be a bit more that we need to do with you, but it's totally up to you. It's not tied to us. So again, similar to the previous items we've been talking about, Haringey paid for this work to be done. They've got what they paid for. They've got what everyone's paid for, and everyone's getting what everyone's paid for. So it's a really good situation for everyone involved. The third item that I talked about was a managed integration service. Now, there's a few systems that we integrate with. A couple that I wanted to highlight. This is a planning systems. So we integrate with Arcus Global's planning system that's built on Salesforce. We also integrate with Uniform Web, which is a new system from IDOX, and also with Agile, which is another planning system. I'd like to say now we're not a planning consultancy trying to sell any planning software. So I'm just trying to highlight some of the things and how the integrations work. The Arcus spatial editing is actually read and write. So within the user interface of the map, a planning officer can come in and draw a planning boundary, and that will get written across into the spatial data warehouse dynamically. So it's a read write. From a technical point of view, using the WFST protocol to be able to do that. But you can see it sitting within here. You can come through and you can have a variety of layers, and as you turn these on, they just appear, and it's all coming, as I said, with the editing, they dynamically appear within the map user interface. They've got the additional advantage that if any constraints need to be run, they've got a single click constraint checking, which will dynamically go over to the spatial data warehouse using the OGC WFST and run queries to find out the constraints that intersect. It's very neat. There's a minimal amount of things that need doing. But it works within Salesforce Arcus Global. So we've also got integration that's happened with Uniform. Now this is the spatial interface within Uniform. It's a read only. They have their own mechanism for storing planning applications that are written to. Now what happens here? We're not responsible for the colours, but you can see you've got a user interface in a similar vein to Arcus Global. all the data is dynamically read from the spatial data warehouse, which is in a different cloud, as is the Arcus one from the Aston cloud. We've got the similar sort of functionality that's being shown here that shows how constraints can be checked, and these are done dynamically against the spatial data warehouse. So this is really, I think, very, very neat. The use of the MIS means that there's a lot less overhead and management overhead for the planning team, and also for yourselves if you're GIS administrators. It all happens dynamically behind the scenes. How does it work? Well, currently we use GeoServer. So it integrates with IDOX, Arcus Global and Agile. We've interestingly been asked about integrating with a highway system as well. So I foresee there'll be more and more of these items that come along. But basically, the way things work is we've got a read-write option. If the system can do write, we can provide that. It's a secure connection that's undertaken via the VPNs and all of those sort of lovely things and whitelisting. It's managed and configured by Aston, and what that means is that we can be responsible for all the support side of things of uptime and various elements like that, that there isn't misconfiguration things that come about by somebody who may not be trained in how to manage the system. So it saves you money on reducing the need for people to be trained on how to use GeoServer or whichever system we're using for doing that. It also, the managed side of things, ensures you've got full priority support with alarms and backups and various different items like that. So it's the real simple way for a local authority to have this integration, but then not having to worry about, like I mentioned, training, keeping things up to date of various bits and pieces like that. The new content that I hadn't presented is basically there are three options that local authorities have or our customers have on how to do these integrations. One thing to say from the outset is Aston can't support any live business system integration via the iShare application URLs that are provided at the front end of iShare. This is due to server loads and the impacts that it may have on our general users if things start running slowly. If you imagine if you had a business system integrated with a public facing system and then a member of public can't access their data or it's very, very slow, there'll be issues that encounter. So we provide the fastest mechanism, which is going into the spatial data warehouse. There are three options of doing this. One is that you can host your own software. So we've got one client who are very technically able and they host their own copy of, I think it might be GeoServer. It's not on our cloud at all. There's a connection they've got into the Aston cloud. They have all responsibilities for the support and configuration of what they've integrated. We have none. It's hosted, as I mentioned, it's hosted outside of Aston, but there's a small annual fee for security configuration and things like that may need changing over the years as things come. So if you think about when we're doing migrations to version 6, there's a few configuration changes that need to happen. So we've got no problem with having secure connections in if you wish to host it yourselves, but we don't take any responsibility and you still need to make sure you've got enough call-off time if reconfiguration things are needed. The second option is that we can host it for you. So you have all the responsibilities for the support and configuration of the integration. There's an annual fee for the hosting. There's also an annual budgetary fee to ensure that of compliance with Cyber Essentials Plus, which entails having security upgrades and a variety of different things like that. We did previously just host it for a nominal fee for customers, but we found that we had a whole series of upgrades that we needed to do for a security update, and customers found it very difficult to get the budget together. Hence, we came along with the MIS service, which is a third option, and Aston is responsible for the support, and we manage the configuration of your instance. So what that means is there's no client access by any of your team members if we're using GeoServer at the moment, and we may change that in the future. There's no access to that data. It's simply what you ask us to share, and it goes via the support desk or via your account manager. We host all of that. There's direct secure access, and it's all undertaken in an annual subscription fee, and any call-off that may be needed if there's changes that happen with external systems or new data that may want to be shown. So it's the means that there's no responsibility for the council. You just can tell us via an email, we want to expose a couple of new layers, and we've already had one in the last month or two from a customer who says they want to expose some additional layers because the new planning laws that are coming through, and we're undertaking that. So they've got no concerns that things are going to go down or there are going to be problems moving forward. So that's to give you a bit of the rule of three options that you do have. And as I said before, we can't provide support if you're doing live business system integration via the iShare application. If you're doing it via the spatial data warehouse, these are the 3 options that we can look at doing for you. So with this, we've got a business case that's available on the website. We've got a whole page that's dedicated to this side of things. And that, in a nutshell, is where we are. So if anyone can remember the 3 that we talked about, we touched on the BridgeStation with API data outputs via geojson. We also touched on the confirm SFTP outputs, and that's really gaining traction with Haringey. And then I've talked about the 3 current systems that we have that we've got integrated, but we are looking at the potential of doing another integration with the managed integration service that will be talking through to a highway system. So if you've got any questions about these sorts of things, just please let me know.
So thanks to Mike for the presentation today. Thanks to everybody that attended. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Hope you found the session valuable, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you.